My DAW of choice is Cubase. Has been for the better part of a decade. And within that time, to physically control it, I've used, let's see, various kinds of mice, trackpads, trackballs, the PreSonus fader port, Behringer X Touch, a machine in controller mode with a script created by Jeff Gibbons. Check him out, he's great. Link in the description. A Steinberg CC121, which I loved until it died last year, and also was discontinued by Steinberg. And lately, a great iPad app called Metagrid Pro, which I will talk about in a future video. After using all those and trying the new Panorama CS12, I think it has the potential to be the best Cubase controller, but it's not there yet. Good news is Nektar seems to be on top of things and updates are coming. I'm not an established music tech YouTuber, so I bought this with my own money because I wanted to try it for my own work and see if I would keep it. And the experience hasn't been entirely positive for me. But to their credit, you see their rep every day taking the punches at the Steinberg forum and turning it into feedback for Nektar, and that gives me confidence in them. Other great YouTubers have made good overviews of the CS12, especially Brian Rivlin and Dom Siglas. I just want to do a quick overview here and then talk about something that the other reviewers, as far as I can see, haven't touched on: controlling VST instruments. At first glance, the layout is super intuitive. You have a really nice fader, not as good as I remember the CC121 fader, but very good. And next to it, LED meters for the selected channel, pan pot, arm, solo, mute buttons, and this select button, which does something really cool. Press on it, click on anything on the screen, and you immediately control it with both the fader and the pan pot. Except sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. All the plugin alliance and SSL stuff I tried works. Some native instruments stuff like the Grandeur works. Others like Massive X, not so much. Sometimes it controls the first parameter correctly, but for subsequent parameters, the click just goes ignored. And on Omnisphere and Keyscape, nothing would respond for me. Growing pains for a new product? Probably. You also have the transport control section with everything you would need to quickly navigate everywhere in your project, as well as mixer, undo, redo, metronome, and other shortcuts. The screen is a nice LCD with soft buttons below and 3 encoders whose functions can change depending on your needs. Really useful for things like zooming, plate head control, nudge, and in a nice twist, clip gain control. The CS12 can also control Cubase's own channel strip easily by pressing the channel button. But I had 2 gripes about this feature. First, you can't enable elements of the strip if they were disabled. And guess what? The default is all of them disabled except for the EQ. So you have to open them yourself anyway. And that's the other thing. Even if they are already enabled, selecting this function should display the channel strip window automatically. The way it works right now, you still have to press Shift and the mixer shortcut. Seems an unnecessary step. Same with the sends control. The sends have to be already active, but at least with this one, there is a representation on the mixer of the individual levels if you have the pane opened. And then the plugin control, which is probably what people will be most interested about in this device. Instant access to the first 8 plugins and plugins 9 to 15 accessed with this button. When a plugin is opened, its controls, in the case of the stock Steinberg plugins and many others like this FabFilter Pro Q3, are pre-mapped. Again, for this one, for example, you have to enable individual bands beforehand. But the ones that are not, the CS12 attempts to lay out controls in the best way it can, and it isn't always the best. For example, it places button functions on the knobs, and then you're forced to do a complete turn on the knob to get the switch to activate. So what does all this mean? It means prepare to spend a lot of time making your own maps. Creating maps is done inside Nektar, a plugin. More on that later. And for the most part, it worked for me. Now, when it comes to VST instruments, the situation is different. The CS12 doesn't control instruments automatically the way it does FX plugins. You can press the channel button and you will have a control page that is mapped to whatever you have defined as quick controls in Cubase. Something I don't find intuitive and rarely use. Please tell me in the comments if this is something you use regularly. The second method, the AI function I mentioned earlier. Hit select, point, click, but you would need to do this for every control and only one control at a time, and sometimes it didn't work. Or the third method, the instrument you want to control needs to be hosted inside an app called Nektar. Many years ago, I owned a great controller for its time, the Novation 61SL Mark II. Handful of a name. But it taught me a hard lesson. You had to install a wrapper, as they were called, to be able to control instruments from it. Later, I sold the controller and upgraded my computer. When I tried to open the old sessions, nothing would open that depended on the wrapper. Back then, Novation basically installed two versions of each of your instruments, the regular version and one with AutoMap in the name. If the system didn't see that name, guess what? It couldn't find your instrument anymore. All wrapper systems have this disadvantage. This one is technically not a wrapper. It is sort of a mini host plugin, complete with a mini mixer where you could even process and mix multiple instruments. Is it a good app? Yeah, it's awesome and it works great. Here it is hosting a contact library. However, this whole situation with future compatibility can be solved by something that you should already be doing anyways. You, of course, back up your sessions when you're done, right? With audio versions of all your MIDI tracks, right? With the presets you used in your instruments saved with the session, right? I know many of you don't do this. Sometimes I forget to and have to spend a late night here and there catching up with the backups. Hence my misgivings about these host applications. But as long as you do what you're supposed to already do, this is a system that works. Nektar seems to be aware of all this as they replied in an email to me. But apparently this is an issue where both Logic's and Cubase's people have to collaborate with them. And like I said, their rep is very active on Steinberg's forum, replying to message after message and really engaging with the Cubase community. But for now, I'm not sure I want to load an extra host inside my DAW. What do you think? My personal verdict, the CS12 has the potential to be the best controller for Cubase out there at this price point. It really does, but it needs to get there. And based on the customer support and their presence in forums, I have hope that it will be that way and all these little gremlins will get corrected. It's almost there. Almost. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe if you like this. See you in the next one.